No winter lasts forever. There's some winters are long, some are short, but they always end into a new springtime, a time of optimism, a time of growth, a time things really transform. And, there's no war that lasts forever. There's no economy that lasts forever, good or bad. They all change, right? There's no pandemic that lasts forever. Might feel like it, but it doesn't. And it's important to know that. It's like, as corny as it sounds, it's always darkest before the dawn. That phrase we've heard a million times sounds so corny. Well, it's been used a million times because it's true. I mean, if you're having a rough time, and it's pretty nice to know daytime's coming. So if you're going to help yourself or your kids, you got to recognize patterns. And we're going to do this the next few days. You're going to see what triggers you. Not, oh my God, don't trigger me, like some people have been trained to do, which is absurd. You can't train everybody not to trigger you. You got to get rid of your triggers. What triggers you to be angry or sad or to overeat or to smoke or to drink or to feel so bad about yourself? And how do we get rid of that trigger? That's what we want to focus on and shifting here to give you a sense. But once you recognize the pattern, you're no longer fearful, right? The second skill is pattern utilization. Once you recognize the pattern, once you know what it is, you can use it instead of letting it use you. Like, what creates stress for you? You either use stress or stress uses you, right? That's how it works. If you look at anyone that is incredibly successful at anything, and I have the privilege of working with some of the greatest athletes, some of the greatest business people, entrepreneurs, people that started with nothing, multi-billionaires, and they weren't part of the lucky sperm club. They earned it. They found a way to add value, right? I don't care who it is, sports, acting, music, entertainment, anything you can imagine, the best in the world I get to work with. And what they all have in common is they've learned to recognize patterns and use them. If it's a great director, Spielberg knows when to zoom in just to have that emotion, when to pull out, what music to bring in to change the way you feel. And it's a pattern. They're able to do it over and over again because they know the pattern. If you look at anybody, how many of you own your own business out there? I'm curious. Make some noise if you own your own business. Or give us a thumbs up if you're online there. Thank you. So lots of you, if you own your own business is pattern recognition. I mean, I used to not be able to run one business when I started out. Now I have 114 companies, and I'm proud to tell you because I started from nothing. Now we're doing $9 billion of business across all these different industries because once I recognized patterns, I learned how to use them. But I studied the people that were the best in the world. I didn't go to school for it. I went to the individuals that are actually doing it. And I can teach you those patterns. That's why I help people turn businesses around. So pattern utilization, once you know how to use the patterns, now you have power. You have the power to make music. You have the power to get results. You have the power to change your finances. You have the power to change your emotion. But the third skill is the one we want to get to, which is pattern creation. Pattern creation is where now it's kind of like if you learn to play the piano, you probably learn to play other people's music first, right? And then what happens is if you've done it long enough, hopefully there's a moment where you say, I'm standing on the shoulders of what I've learned. Let me do what I want to do. And you start creating your own music. That's when people become masterful at something. And we want to ideally take you, some of you anyway, if you want to not only recognize patterns and use them and get rid of the ones you don't want, but maybe create some new patterns that could really change your life for the better. Who's up for that, ladies and gentlemen? Say aye. So our process is, think of these seasons that we just talked about just for a second. Because I'm wondering where you are, because we're all in one of these seasons. But they don't last forever. There's springtime. What happens in the springtime? Well, my daughter's in the springtime of her life. Think of like 0 to 21, right? She's not quite 4 yet. I'm amazed. I mean, we were at dinner the other night. She was speaking to one person in Spanish, the other person in Chinese. She's learned both languages and English. I can't do that, right? It's amazing. But learning for her is automatic. In springtime, things grow. And springtime, people are optimistic, right? And think of springtime as a season in people's minds. And if you look at history, seasons are usually about 15, 18, 20 years. And then we get burnt out, even a good emotion. Like, how many of you ever smiled so much that your face hurt? Anybody know what I'm talking about here, right? So after a while, we want to go to something else. And the universe or God, whichever you prefer, I prefer God, but God seemed, or the universe seemed to figure this out. We have a tough season. We have an easy season where it's easy to grow. Then we have a tough season to make us strong. Summertime. What happens in summertime? It's hot and it's difficult, and you got to push through. Some people plant the seed in spring and they come back the next day and go, "Where's my crop? Are you new?" It doesn't work that way. right? You got to make it through all the seasons, right? So you got to make it through the hot summer. And then after you fight through the summer, you get to the fall where it's easy again. You get a reaping time. When it's that season in the world and history, people want to give you a house. They want to give you a loan even though you don't even have a job, but you have a pulse, right? You remember those days? Right? It's just ridiculous. Stock markets go crazy. Everybody's excited. It's like the roaring 20s. And then what happens after fall? We hit a winter. And boy, when winter's happening, people think it's never going to end. It's forever. And in winter, everything gets exaggerated. Everybody thinks the whole world's going to end. Oh, my God, there's going to be World War III. It's going to be nuclear war. You hear it on the news. Oh, in the next 12 years, the whole world's going to dissolve. We've destroyed our environment. It's total bullshit. You know it's bullshit. But if people start to believe that, it controls their whole life because they think this season is every season. And some people, by the way, don't like a season. I don't like winter, someone will say. Well, you don't have to like it, but you better learn to use it because the season's coming. Who's with me on this? Say I. So I'm with you, too. And so think of this. Winter can be a beautiful season. If you do well in winter, you'll do well for the rest of the seasons because that's the one that makes you stronger if you don't give up. Most people pull back. See, winter, you can freeze to death, or you can learn to ski and snowboard, or be by the fire with your family and build your business. So we all go through these seasons personally. Think of springtime as like 0 to 21. Think of summer as kind of 21 to, 22 to 42 kind of thing. Think of fall as kind of 42 to 62, 63. And the winter is 63 to 83 to 103 to 120. The oldest humans last that long. Every season has opportunities, and every season has predictable problems. And the same thing is true in a business has seasons. Everything does. So if we understand this, we can learn to take advantage where we are, and we can anticipate where the challenges are that we might be facing. Because if you can anticipate the challenge, you don't have to react. You can actually get the result that you want. So how many of you right now, I'm just curious, are in springtime? You join me because things are going great. You're growing. You're starting something new. Maybe your kids got out of there and are gone, and you're starting to. Who's got a springtime going right now? Make some noise. Who's in springtime? Early one was watching people in therapy for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And when I got involved with NLP, seeing it could be done in minutes. And I used to go to destroy therapists. I used to attack them. Now I've trained, literally hundreds of thousands of them.
Got it.
In fact, they can watch my stuff now and get credits to remain a therapist, even though I'm not a therapist myself.
So that drove you, actual therapist.
It was that because I was so mad that somebody would be 10 years still dealing with a problem that I knew could be dealt with in a day or two, or an hour or two.
I got it.
And so I remember I got on a radio show in Vancouver, and I went on the show, and I didn't know it was a shock jock. I didn't know what a shock jock was then. And so the guy starts, setting me up and attacking me and saying, well, how old are you? And you don't have a degree. And how are you going to do this? And he just starts going after me in every way you possibly can. And then he brings a psychiatrist on who starts attacking me verbally because he said, there's no way you can wipe things out as fast as you're saying. There's just absolutely no way. You're a liar. You're a charlatan. Yeah. This is on national radio. Mm-hmm. And so my competitiveness came out in that moment very intensely. And so I turned to the guy and I very calmly said over the radio, I said, sir, are you a scientist? He said, of course, I'm a physician. I said, good. So if you're a scientist, you must be stating your hypothesis. Because your hypothesis is I'm a liar and a charlatan because you've never met me, right? You never met my clients. So you can only tell me what you believe. I said, so if you have a hypothesis and you're a true scientist, you have to test it, right? And the voice goes, yeah. And I said, well, I'm doing a free guest event at the Holiday Inn tomorrow night, 7 p.m. I'm going to do a series of demonstrations. I suggest you come and prove I'm a charlatan. Bring me one of your worst patients. Bring me somebody that you've worked on for years not being able to change. I said, I'm sure you got plenty of those. You want to play hardball? I can play hardball, especially in those days. Yeah. I'm a lot softer today. But I was still proving myself to myself and other people, I think, at that stage. You're immature, so I was intense. And so the guy goes, we all have people that aren't ready to change yet. I said, well, that's funny. I haven't found any. Of course, I'd done 4 therapies at that point, but I didn't mention that, right? And he goes, well, I have this one woman, she has this snake phobia. She goes to sleep at night. She has a dream that snake bites her in the face. And if you ever had an intense dream like that, it fires off your adrenal glands and you wake up. How often? 3 to 5 times a night. How many years you been treating her? 7 years. I said, bring her down. That should take me 10 or 15 minutes. And I said it directly. And that guy goes, ah! And the guy cuts him off, says, see you right at the Holiday Inn. So I show up the next day at the Holiday Inn. I'm hoping in those days to get, 150 people to show up for a free guest event. 500 people show up. I mean, there's not seating in a room. People are standing on the walls. If the fire department comes
just to see,
because they want to see the shootout.
That's
at
right.
OK Corral.
Yeah, that's right.
Me and this guy.
Because
right?
he shows up.
He shows up, but he's not there. I'm looking around, and I don't know. Do you do this when I meet somebody on the phone? I can't help it. I make a picture of mine what I think
what
they
look like.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm picturing, okay, be there. I'm picturing this giant guy with a scared woman on his arm, right? And I'm looking for something. Nobody like that. So I get up to introduce myself in those days. Hi, I'm Tony Robbins. I said, I'm going to do some demonstrations today to show you can make changes in minutes you thought would take months or years. And right when I say this, the side door bursts open like a movie. And this guy about, half my size up to here walks in with this woman on his arm, walks straight to the front and stands there while I'm speaking. And I go, excuse me, looks like I have a visitor. I just go down and shake his hand. He wouldn't shake my hand. He just goes, here's the woman. And my whole career was made in that moment. I brought her on stage and I said, ma'am, I understand you've had certain phobias to certain things for a period of time. How do you feel about snakes? And I shouted it. If you've ever seen a phobia, it's not just fear, it's uncontrollable shaking response. And then I calmed her down and I said, and you've been treated for 7 years by that psychiatrist right there? And she goes, yeah. And I said, okay. And then I started doing this work. It took me about 15 minutes. And when I was done, everybody's watching the whole thing. I said, how do you feel about snakes? No response. I was totally fine. I said, that's great. So I've always been about demonstration to make it really clear. So there's a piece back here on the table and I grab this bag and I pull the bag out and the bag's moving slightly underneath and the people in the audience see it and they start to anticipate. And I pull out just a little gardener snake, pull the gardener snake in front of her. And instead of screaming or shaking, she did this. She just pulled back. And I said, how do you feel? She goes, they're not very attractive. And I said, well, I know you feel some fear, but notice there's no spitting, no shaking. You're not screaming. I said, why don't you hold it? She goes, I don't know. And the audience starts going, hold it. Hold it. It's like a movie, man. You can't make this stuff up. And so finally the lady grabs it, squeezes the snake. Yeah. I said, don't kill it, right? And so that launched my career. So then every night I was doing a different type of event. I had every kind of change you can imagine. And I started doing these impossible interventions. I'll do one session. I don't care what it is. You're addicted. It's something. I'll turn around and you pay me nothing. And it was $1,000 in those days, which was a huge amount of money, So, but I did it to put it on the line. I'm putting myself in line. If I don't get a result, you don't get anything. And that's how I built it. And then I had a woman had an orgasm in 10 years and I gave an orgasm without touching her. And guys are like, can you teach me to do that when I'm tired? And then I started working with sports teams. And then all of a sudden
you literally sat down with a lady who hadn't had an orgasm for 10 years and you taught her how to do it without touching her.
I didn't teach her. I didn't touch her. I eliminated the barrier that she had.
What was the barrier?
In her head, she was constantly analyzing every single moment. Well, a woman is very different than a man. They can't have that experience unless they let go completely. So I got her to let go completely and then experience the joy that she'd wanting to have. But she had all these blockages, all the pain of other relationships, problems. It was complex.
Sure.
But it took me about 45 minutes to do it. But when I started doing that, then I had all of a sudden politicians. I had sports teams.
Not politicians needing help with orgasm, just politicians calling for other reasons.
Well, they might have needed that also. But that's not what I help them with. By nature, they're politicians, so I'm sure they don't have that many orgasms, right? No, but all of a sudden, I'm working with Olympic athletes in 1984 in LA. That's how long I've been doing this. And the guy I worked with wasn't supposed to win the team, and he ended up winning the 1500 freestyle and swimming, and that gave me another notch, and then the Army, and then all of a sudden, work with Nelson Mandela and Mother Teresa and Gorbachev and Clinton, and I'm only 32, so I'm going to be 65 in about 30 days here. So it's been 48 years of that continued growth and expansion. Then I got into businesses and figuring out the patterns in businesses. It's all patterns, as you know, Patrick. Like if anyone listening wants to say, okay, the world seems uncertain. And I have 5 kids and 5 grandkids. So I have a 50-year-old daughter and I have a 3.5-year-old daughter because 3 of my kids I adopted early on when I was just 24, 25 years old. And so I look at my grandkids especially and my youngest daughter, and I think 40% of the jobs, if you believe the studies, are going to be gone because of AI, because of robotics, because of nanotechnology and so forth. So how do I arm them to do well in the future? And the answer is there's 3 skills everybody needs, and they're so simple. And they're the skills that make anybody masterful. It's made you successful in your insurance business. It's what's made you successful in this business. The first thing is pattern recognition. If you start recognizing patterns, fear disappears. Because like right now when people say, oh, we've never been so divided, or now we're, the country has a little more optimism, but we've never been so divided. That's total BS. I can show you the letters that are put out that were posted between Jefferson and Adams. And if you read what they wrote, it makes anything the left or right has said about each other look calm compared to that. So it's like we go in cycles. So when you recognize a pattern, you no longer react. It's like losers react, leaders anticipate. Anticipation is power. So when you know the pattern, and that's what makes anybody great, they see the pattern. But what makes them really great is the second skill, when you learn to use the patterns. So if you and I look at anybody, you see somebody that's great in investing, and I've interviewed 50 of more than 50 of the very best in the world. The Ray Dalias, the Carl Icahns, the Warren Buffetts, all the best in private equity. And what you begin to see is there are certain patterns, even though they go about it differently, that are universal. If you sow the same seeds, you reap the same rewards. But they know how to use it. If you see somebody great in music or dance or a movie maker, they know where to move the camera, to move your emotion. They bring it in close, when to bring the music up, how to do it. They know it. That makes them masterful. But the third level skill is pattern creation. That's what you've begun to do. That's what I've begun to do. It's like when you learn to play a piano, most people learn someone else's patterns. You learn to see the patterns, recognize them, then you learn to use them. But if you do enough other music, then now you get to come out and you start creating things. So I'm standing on the shoulders of all the people before me, as are you, because I learned so many things to them. But now at this stage of my life, the last 15, 20 years, I've been able to create things because I know what those patterns are. So those skill sets, that's how my kids will do well. Because if you can learn rapidly and recognize patterns, there's nothing you can't do well at. And that's really, by the way, noting the patterns of where we are in history, the pattern of where you are in your own life. I'll give you a simple example. What made human beings go from survival, living in fear, where we're hunter-gatherers, to where we could stay in one place, build communities, build cities, build countries, have homes, have the education? What made that possible was one pattern recognition that changed humanity. Do you know what it was?
Pattern recognition. That you're not talking fire, you're not talking pattern recognition. Community, that we need each other. What is it?
Seasons. Until we understood seasons, we had to constantly move from place to place and hope we could find our food. But once we understood seasons, we knew if you do the right thing at the wrong time, there is zero reward. But if you do the right thing at the right time, the rewards are immense. So if you plant in the winter, I don't care how hard you work, or the summer, you get nothing. It's like recognizing the seasons changed humanity. Well, there's a season in your own life. Some of your viewers are younger, maybe 0 to 21. Think of that as springtime. When it's springtime, what does spring have? Everything grows easily. If it's a springtime in business, you think you're a genius because your business grows. Everybody's business grows because it's a time of tremendous optimism and immense growth. The environment's different. People's attitudes are different. But these cycles go through 18, 20-year cycles. If you study 1,000 years of Roman history, which I've done, or 500 years of Anglo-American history, you see about every 18 to 20 years, there's a shift. It's kind of like we exhaust an emotion. Do you ever smile so much your face hurt?
Yes.
You know what I mean? So you need a change.
Sure.
Well, after springtime, the easy time, comes a summertime. And the summer is always a testing time. It's tougher. A lot of people plant in the spring and they go, where's my crop? Are you new? You have to get through all the seasons, right? So summer tests people. And then you go to another reaping time. You go to the fall where it's easy again, where now things flow. Economies go crazy. People want to give you a mortgage even though you barely have a pulse and not a job. You remember those days,
of course, right? No income, no assets.
And boom, just give it to anyway. And markets go through the roof. But again, what follows that is winter. And the great thing about life is you never skip from the fall to spring. You always go through winter. Some are short, some are long, some are hard, some are easy. But we go through them. They have a purpose. They weed out the weak. They make us, if we push through it, stronger. They make everything better going forward. So there's a purpose in every season. So 0 to 21, you could call the springtime of most people's lives, where some of us had to go to work at 7, 8 years old to support our family, but still, you were still protected. If there's a war, you're not going to war. Someone's protecting you. Someone's mostly providing for you, usually providing for you. You're being fed information. You're learning. But 22 to 42, that's the summertime. That's the testing time. That's when most people come out and go, I know I was taught all this, but I'm going to test what I believe. you know, and you're very optimistic. In fact, you think you're invincible at 22, 23, 24. You go like, I'm going to be president of the United States, I'm going to be a multi-billionaire, and I'm going to have 100 relationships simultaneously, and everyone's going to be happy. And then you're 30 and you're going, I can't even keep one relationship happy, and I'm burnt to the ground.
That's right.
So you go through the phase. But think of 22 to 42 as being like the soldier of society. In fact, if we go to war, you're the ones going to war, 22 to 42. In business, you're the soldier. You're learning, you're growing, you're grunting it out, you're hustling, right? If you work hard during that time, and you've done well during spring, you come to the fall, which is, you know, you look at 43 to 63, that's your power period, right? That's the period where you had explosive growth in your business, as an example. That's when you became who you are, where your name became known. That's where all of a sudden you can do probably more today with your pinky than when you work 20 hours a day. And now if you work 20 hours a day, it produces generational impact much greater than that. So that period of time, by the way, 22 to 42, if people are in that stage of life right now, it's statistically the most unhappy period. Because people are trying, they thought it was going to be easy. It's not so easy, they eventually learn, usually in their early 30s. Yeah. And then what they learned is, well, not as easy as I thought. I'm not as invincible as I thought. And they have to figure things out. And they're trying to prove themselves to themselves and others. They haven't figured it all out yet. Now, some people do these seasons earlier, some later, but it's a good range. In that power period, that's when you have greatest economic growth. That's when you start having long-term relationships. But the ultimate time, and I say to you this as a brother who's heading in that direction, because I never would have believed it, is really when you get to 63 to 83 or 63 to 103 or 63 to 120, which is the oldest humans, the final season, the winter season. But that's the season in which you really are the elder of society. And if you've done your job up front, you've reaped so much, all you want to do is give back. And you don't worry about what people think about you, because you sure would like to make everybody happy, but you know, unless you got holes, Jesus couldn't pull it off. So I don't know if you're going to do that, right? So it's like, I'm here to help the people that are interested. I'm not here to say I'm the right thing for everybody. And you own yourself at a different level, and you really can move a pinky and make things happen. So